Howdy, it's Constitutional Clayton here, and I want to bring you a historical update. That's right, history is going on right before our eyes, and if we just open our eyes and look at it for what it is, it brings forward a lot of knowledge, a lot of things we've already known before. We can see history repeating itself. I want you to get this video out to your friends and family because we're going to look at history, and we're also going to look at current events. I'm going to show you just how sinister things have been and how things have actually changed these days with more technology, how that's actually empowering humanity. Alright, we're going to look at this article from The Blaze, and they've got some good quotes in there, so I want to look at it. The headline reads, "The Blaze updates our original story with insider sources. Obama purging military commanders. Quote, anyone in the ranks who disagrees or speaks out is being purged." Alright, so let's read what some of these quotes are in here and saying. "I think they're rushing to opportunity of the shrinkage of the military to get rid of people that don't agree with him or don't toe the party line. Remember," former White House Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel said, "never waste a good crisis." A senior retired general told The Blaze on the condition of anonymity because he still provides services to the government and fears possible retribution. And I'll tell you, he should, because of what has happened historically. Even as a retired general, it's still possible for the administration to make life miserable for us. If we're working with the government or have contracts, they can just rip that out from under us, he said. Retired U.S. Army Major General Paul Revere, hope I'm saying that right, an outspoken critic of Obama, said that the White House fails to take action or investigates its own, but finds it very easy to fire military commanders who, quote, who have given their lives for the country. Valley thinks he knows why the purge is happening. Quote, Obama will not purge a civilian or a political appointee because they have bought into Obama's ideology. That's what Valley say. The White House protects their own, and that's why they stalled on the investigation into Fast and Furious, Benghazi, and Obamacare. He's internationally weakening and gutting our military. Pentagon has reducing us to a superpower, as a superpower, and anyone in the ranks who disagrees or speaks is being purged. That was a quote from the headline. A Pentagon official who asked to remain nameless because they were not authorized to speak on the matter, said even young officers down through the ranks have been told not to talk about Obama or the politics of the White House. They are purging everyone, and if you want to keep your job, just keep your mouth shut. Yes, that is chilling indeed. So there is evidence that the generals are speaking out, saying, yes, this is what Obama's doing. He is purging us. So let's look at what who some of those generals are. Okay, so this article is from WorldNet Daily, and it has all the same quotes from the last article, except they actually go on to talk about all the people that were purged. Army General Major Ralph Baker, Army Brigade General Brian Roberts, Marine Corps Major General Greg A. Sturtevant, Marine Corps Major General Charles M. Garangus, Army Lieutenant General David Holmes Hunton Jr., Navy Vice Administration Tim Giardina, Air Force Major General Michael Carey, Army General David Petraeus, and we remember Petraeus. He was the one who came out and told us basically to Congress, to our faces, that we no longer own our army. They belong to NATO. And I actually went over this in a previous video. But it's important that we understand that concept. They're basically saying we no longer own our military. Our Congress doesn't give our military orders. NATO does. We pay for it. And they're supposed to operate in our interests. And they go to fight for our freedoms. Not NATO. Not for their interest. And I'll tell you who has their hands in NATO, and that's the international bankers. We know they've set up all of these international funds so that they can be the international government, but that's for later. There's also a couple more. We'll talk about General John Allen. He was relieved of duty for inappropriate communications. General Stanley McChrystal was fired by Obama for alleged comments he made in Rolling Stone magazine. General David McKinnon, I hope I said that right, who was replaced by McChrystal. So there are a lot of people who have been purged. Here's the good thing. They weren't shot in the head. Their family members weren't taken out back and, just shot, and nobody really knows what happened to them because, they're always gone. This is a day of information. If anything like that happened, it would be a shock to our country, and people would rebel, and there would be a revolution overnight. So we can look at these people as being saved simply by technology. Seriously. And we're going to talk about the difference between today and what's historically happened in the past. Okay, so I've actually researched this subject more than I should have, but I am going to read from the History Follower because it is accurate information, but it's something that I can read off of for you guys. Alright, so here I go. On June 28th, Hitler was warned by phone that the Purge and the SS was on full alert. The next day, Hitler was informed the SA had taken to the streets in Munich in retaliation for the rumors. Hitler flew to Munich on June 30th, and the bloody purge of Operation Hummingbird began. Hitler arrested Röhm and other SA members, which is the Socialist Nationalist Party, that he was a part of, personally, and there he sent them to Stedelium prison, where they were later shot by the SS. Homosexuality had been tolerated and overlooked among the Socialist Nationalist members, but now they were shot on sight and used partially as an excuse for the purge. On Saturday, June 30th, 1934, a prearranged code word of Colibri, meaning hummingbird, spoke through the phone lines, unleashed a murderous violence that would last 3 days in Berlin and 20 other cities in Germany. The SS execution squads and Göring's Gestapo police hunted down the Socialist Nationalist leaders and those others who were listed in the Reich list of unwanted persons that Hitler had created. The Reich list of unwanted persons, which was a list that Hitler had created. So Hitler had a kill list. See, kill list, like Obama's kill list, but this is Hitler's kill list. And they hunted them down, and they put them in camps, and they shot them. Other noted Germans who were murdered along Röhm during that purge included left-wing Stasiarist, I hope I'm saying that wrong, it's the faction members including Gregor Strasser, conservative anti-Nazis, Kurt von Schleicher, former Chancellor, Gustav Ritter von Kahr, found hacked to death, Father Bernard Schimpfle, Karl Ernst, Catholic leader Dr. Erich Kirchner, which is proof that he was not a Christian. He was quoted saying that his movement is a Christian movement. Well, so has Obama. Alright. He killed over 200 people in his in his purge. On Sunday evening, July 1st, Hitler hosted a tea party in the garden of the Chancellery for cabinet members and their families to show restoration of normalcy. So he's like, all right, after all this purge, we're going to go have some tea. By the next day, the bloody siege was over, with probably more than 200 murdered, although in a speech soon afterward, Hitler announced only 74 necessary extractions for the good of Germany. He declared himself supreme judge, above the law, making the law and capable of instilling fear and terror into the hearts of all who opposed him. But he was able to do this because he purged all of his opposition. There was nobody left. They turned it into a one-party system. So that's interesting history. But let's think about the people who were purged. They weren't allowed to stay up and say, oh yeah, we took a litmus test, and if we failed the litmus test, then we were shot in the back of the head, or or in our case, they were actually just fired, purged. It's good to be able to be purged from our military and go home at the end of the night. These people weren't so lucky. And as we see what happens in Germany later, it was really just the start. But he had to get rid of political opposition in order to make what he wanted to do legal. Because everything Hitler did was legal. But Hitler wasn't the only one doing these types of purges. There were other dictators who were funded by the same banksters who acted in a similar manner. Pol Pot was funded by international bankers, and we actually helped with some of that funding. Certain parts of our government, our representatives, actually helped put Pol Pot in power, Mao Zedong, and we're going to talk about Joseph Stalin. And I went on the internet and I looked for a few articles to show you guys. The one I like the most isn't very pretty, so I'm not going to show it. But I'll let you know it's from johndclair.net/russ12.htm. And he lays out 3 reasons for Joseph Stalin's terror. He wanted his country to be whole. He wanted urgency because he wanted Russia to catch up with the Western world, and he thought that if Russia didn't do that in 10 years, then Germany would invade. He was very, very paranoid. Stalin became increasingly paranoid, seeing, false plots everywhere, and he was power mad, and he demanded continuous praise and applause. So he really was narcissistic, and if he didn't play into his narcissism, well, in 1935, his wife killed herself. That just tells you a little bit about it. But this article also talks about the apparatus of terror. So he had secret police. The CHEKA became the OGPU, and then eventually the NKVD. The first purges were including anybody who opposed industrialization, and the Kolkas who opposed collectivization. If you weren't a collectivist or an industrialist, basically he purged you. Then he didn't stop there. He also purged some of his political opponents. Kurov, a rival to Stalin, was murdered, although probably he ordered the assassination, but Stalin used it as a chance to arrest thousands of his opponents. In 1934 to 1939, Stalin's political opponents were put on show trials, where they pleaded guilty to impossible charges of treason. And I'm going to show you a video on that later. In 1937, the commander-in-chief of the Red Army and 7 leading generals were shot. In 1938 to 39, all the admirals and half the army officers were executed or imprisoned. This went on for a long time. He also purged religious leaders. He imprisoned religious leaders and closed down churches, ethnic groups, and ordinary people were denounced, arrested, and sent to the Gulag, which was a system of labor camps. 20 million Russians were sent to the camps, where perhaps half of them died. We don't really know how many, but there were a lot. People lived in fear, and all the people who were loyal to Stalin, they were the ones who got all the nice houses, all the good jobs. They had the best holidays. And then this article goes on to talk about the cult of Stalin. And people don't realize that's not just like some label they slapped on. There really was a cult of Stalin. Censorship of anything that might reflect badly of Stalin, propaganda everywhere, pictures, statues, continuous praise and applause of Stalin. Didn't matter how many people he killed. Places were named after him. Mothers taught their children that Stalin was the wisest man of the age. History books and photographs were changed to make him the hero of the revolution and to obliterate names of purged people. This is awful kind of stuff. So we can see how he used fear when purging people. He also purged people by shooting them or sending them to a camp. Very, very Hitler-like, except his purges didn't last 3 days like Obama's did. His purges lasted throughout his whole reign. And this type of dictatorship became very deadly for the people. We talk about democide sometimes, and democide is deaths by the state that are not military related. There's a study by the University of Hawaii. I can't remember what the actual number was, but it's It's an infallible number. Incredible how high the number of deaths by government are. And this is literally governments taking people out back and shooting them.
The city of grandeur, Moscow took centuries of building, and the leaders often didn't hesitate to sacrifice their people for bigger things. Joseph Stalin killed millions, but before, he got rid of his opposition. And this building right here is now a concert hall. It used to be the House of Soviets, and that is where the Moscow show trials took center stage 70 years ago. The enemies of the people, as they were branded, Zinoviev, Kamenev and other key Bolsheviks facing trial. They didn't agree with Stalin. They wanted socialism worldwide. Stalin wanted one communist superstate. Stalin started a campaign to eliminate all Bolsheviks who took part in 1917 revolution. Accused of crimes from espionage and sabotage to forming a terrorist organization to assassinate Stalin, they all confessed.
There was no conspiracy, no threat to Stalin's life. Stalin was sensitive to disapproval and he eliminated any division within the Communist Party.
Lubyanka, a successor to the KGB, the FSB is here now, and decades back this is where the accused and their families were interrogated and their confessions extorted. Later they were executed. And just a few hundred meters away from Lubyanka on this little side street, we found the gates which hundreds went in through but never came out of. His only fault was his proximity to Lenin, says the daughter of Bolshevik Serebrякov, who was among the first to be accused at the show trial. She was 13 when her father was executed.
We say Stalin's repressions, but we don't realise repressions are a form of punishment. But my father was punished for a crime he did not and could not commit. And later people were shot without trial, without paperwork or any explanation.
This house on the embankment of the Moscow River saw the first mass arrests following the show trials. It was built specially for high-level party officials, and virtually every night black cars came for its residents.
Well, what we're concerned about is a president who acts as if he were God. And one of the places that Obama is trying to instill fear is in the ranks of the military. Leanne McAdoo has more for us.
That's absolutely right, David. The Obama administration has just fired the 10th military commander this year.
Oh, wow.
This guy was in charge of the largest military base in Japan, and he was let go because of a lack of confidence. That was all the details they had given there. So.
That's not very specific.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not going to release further because there was no findings that he had any criminal misconduct. So that's kind of where they're leaving it. But basically, we're definitely seeing that he is purging the military of anyone who does not go along with his communist agenda. Anyone who questions the official line that he's given to the American people and the media. Of the 9 others that were fired, 3 of those generals were either critical of or directly involved with the scandal that happened in Benghazi. In one case, the U.S. Army General Ham, he was commanding the U.S. African Command when the consulate was attacked. He was highly critical of the decision by the State Department not to send in reinforcements. He said reinforcements could have been sent in time. A second admiral who was also fired, he seconded that opinion. He said aircraft could have been sent to Libya in time to help the Americans, and he was later removed from his post for alleged profanity and making racially insensitive comments. So
these are very, very minor charges. They're not very specific. It's kind of like what we saw with the dismissal, unprecedented dismissal of these nuclear commanders, the number 1 and number 2. When it happened to the number 2 guy, everybody said this is totally unprecedented, and then it happened to the number 1 guy for a reason that was even less believable, that he was on a special assignment somehow. How do you have the number 1 nuclear commander on a special assignment they didn't like the way he performed?
No, yeah, if you don't like the way that Obama performs, you will be purged. And they are sending that message loud and clear through the military. But what we're seeing here is that people who are loyal to the Constitution, the military and our veterans, people who have sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution, those people are being relieved of duty. The people who are being replaced are people who are loyal to the president and loyal to Obama.
That's very troubling, because it's not just an issue. We want civilian control of the military, but we want civilian control by people who have taken an oath to defend the Constitution and really mean it. And of course, we don't find anybody like that in Washington much, right?
Exactly.
It's not just the president, it's pretty much pervasive with everybody. They take these oaths, but they really don't really believe them, don't follow through on them.
Right, and Obama really takes advantage of the fact that the military adheres to that constitutional requirement to have a civilian leadership over the military, but he is no civilian. He is a tyrant. He acts like a tyrant, and he is bought and paid for by the New World Order. So we see that Obama has no problem firing high-ranking officials in the military, but he won't go after his own officials in his administration and investigate Benghazi.
And that's the key. It's Benghazi. That's what he wants to avoid people looking at in detail at all costs. That's something the military takes very seriously. They don't like being told to stand down and leave their personnel stranded to die. That's made a lot of people in the military angry throughout the ranks, and he's purging those ranks of people. That's not a scandal that's going to go away. That is something that is very serious. It should take him out of office. Well, thank you, Leanne. Appreciate it.
You don't think that it could happen to the people here? Well, let's not forget about the ability for our government to see this video and all your Facebook posts and tweets as evidence in a purge scenario. If Hitler or Stalin had this type of technology, they would have had super tyrannies. That is what our country is being set up for, with one law holding them back: the Constitution. The Constitution is meaningless unless we give it power and breathe the life back into those documents and say, no, these are our rights. And then we'll lose our country. This purge is happening now, and we are looking right at them while they do it. Please watch my previous video, Patriot Terrorists. I will leave a link in the description below, and this shows how they are targeting us and who they are picking out. It's a very good way of showing other people how patriots are being targeted and other religious groups and things of that nature. A great fictional view of the purge that comes from a video entry into the Paul Revere InfoWars contest is Purge. It is a very good short film about how the purge could play out in America. It contains a lot of good knowledge and info, which is why I'm suggesting it. I will leave a link to it in the description as well. My friends, do not be fooled by Obama or Stalin or Hitler or George Bush. They are all puppets. Just like in The Wizard of Oz, when Toto pulls the curtain back and reveals that the wizard is just some little old man who uses a front in order to exert the illusion that he is almighty and powerful. Everyone just assumes that his front is true and allows it to go on by consenting. Like a magician, once you see this trick, or once you see the trick, you will never be fooled by it again. If you were walking down the street and you saw someone being raped, and then you just turned your head and kept walking, this is actually consenting to let it happen. So we have to withdraw that consent. Governments tend to represent the people, especially when they are in the form of a republic, which we have. It is time that we all got together under the ideals of freedom to breathe the life back into the Constitution and become collectively aware that our freedoms are on the line. I believe the collapse is inevitable, but whatever fills that void will decide the future of our children. No matter what happens politically, they will not save you, so you have to prepare for the collapse. When you get it, you will prepare for it. Until then, listen in.